Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us, and we hope that this session gets you up and running in regards to the IPA claimback process and gain a better understanding of the process as a whole. A few things before we get started. We will open it up for questions at the end, but if you have something you need to ask before that time, please feel free to unmute yourself or put a question in the chat or even use the Q&A. Whatever you feel most comfortable, please ask your question. You don't need to wait until the end. We are recording this session and it will be sent to you once available. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming our subject matter expert, Chandra Price, JCI Pricing Lead.
Morning.
Good morning.
That was very official. That was good. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Like Robin said, I am a strategic pricing lead in the pricing department for Johnson Controls. And so I do manage the team that processes claimbacks as well as other things, but our number one task is going to be IPA claimbacks. And so we're going to go over that today. I do understand that most wind supply locations do have wind supply corporate process their claimbacks. And so those are usually submitted through Elmira to us in a big spreadsheet once a month. And so I do understand that most of you guys will probably continue to use Wind Supply Corporate for that. But I think it just serves us all better when you guys understand what the process is, even if your fingers aren't completely in the system every single time. This will help better understand when you also receive the emails back from Elmira, maybe at the end of the month, and you get those generic emails that says maybe you overshot your credit or something and they're deducting so much money back. This will also help understand what those differences are and what we need to do as a team to help lower those deductions back to you guys. Okay, I do have a PowerPoint for claimbacks and how to process claimbacks, but I kind of like starting in Navigator just to show a few things within Navigator in case you're not familiar with Navigator, where you can go to see a couple of things. And then I also want to touch base real quick just on how to read an IPA before it's being submitted for a claimback, just in the off chance you're not in these screens every single day. To show a screen that is very much like yours, I have signed in as Shane Miller, which I don't believe he's on this on this call, which is fine, but I just wanted the closest screen to what you guys should be able to see from your side. And so the IPA that I pull up today and the things that I use today are attached to Indianapolis Wind Supply, but your screens are going to look pretty much the same with your data, of course. Okay, so across the top, if you've not been in Navigator before, the main things we're going to go into today are applications, pricing, and if you're looking at claimbacks, there's going to be two main things that you're going to use. You're going to use, of course, the IPA claimbacks where you can submit IPAs or view the status of IPAs. And then there's also quote status. JCI does use the word quote and IPA interchangeable. They're the same things. Some screens we call them quote, some screens we call it IPA. It means the same thing. And quote status, what it does is it allows you to see what's on an actual IPA. If you weren't the one that submitted it, maybe you don't know, but you need to work on an IPA claimback, or you want to view an IPA claimback, or see how much credit you guys would get back based on a particular sale price of an item or anything. You'll be able to see those types of things, excuse me, in quote status. So these are going to be the two main ones when you're talking about IPA claimbacks that people are going to use. So I'm going to go into quote status first. And I'm going to go look at an IPA for Indianapolis Wind Supply that is based off a residential matrix created. Most wind supplies have this created right now, I believe, but not all locations. I think the pricing analysts are setting them up as needed kind of thing. So I put in the IPA here. You'll also see in several places where the IPA can have 4 leading zeros. In most screens, you don't need those 4 leading zeros. You can just drop them off. If I added the 4 leading zeros here, like maybe it was pasted in a spreadsheet or an email or something, and I had the 4 leading zeros, you could still add the 4 leading zeros with the IPA number, and it's still going to pull it up down here. It doesn't matter one versus the other. If you're also unsure what IPA numbers you have out there, maybe you don't have the IPA number, you can also just hit search and it's going to give you a list of your IPA numbers, starting with the newest one here all the way down. I mean, this thing goes for years and years back in the many years back or whatever. And these blue IPA numbers are all hyperlinks if you wanted to go into them. Um, there are 3 main statuses for IPAs. And again, if I'm going too fast, if you have a question in the moment, please go ahead and ask. I'm a talker. I just get to talking. So if you have any questions, please ask. But there are 3 main statuses for an IPA. Approved, of course, means the IPA was approved and it's still in its active, like we haven't moved past the expiration date. Like this particular one is good until July 31st, meaning it is good. Product can be sold off of that IPA all the way through July 31st, right? It doesn't move over to a closed status until August 1st. Closed means, like if we go back here, closed just means we've moved past the expiration date. We're now physically in a month that's beyond that expiration date. And then denied just means that the IPA was, of course, denied. Maybe it came across in our system wonky. Maybe the customer realized that the product, they listed the wrong product. They listed the wrong requested buy price, different things. These 2 right here, it looks like for whatever reason, they submitted one, it was denied and they needed to resubmit another one. That's all. Those are the 3 main. I think those are the only 3 statuses that are out there for IPAs. But I'm going to go into this 297877, which is the Champion Res Matrix for Indianapolis Wind Supply. And I'm just going to point out some of the things, the most important things to read on an IPA, just in case you need to know. The account number, your account number with Johnson Controls will always be right here in the middle. If anybody ever asks you what your SAP account number with us is, or your distributor account number with us, it's right here in the middle of the IPA. The date that the IPA was originally submitted, is right here, as well as the expiration date is going to be right here. Any notes are going to be in this white box here. And if there's more, there will be a scroll down button right here, of course. Here's the project name. This other data is just as we're approving things on our end, not at the top of the list. So types of IPAs, there's residentials, commercials, that just tells us what basic product is on here, right? Of course, you can have a residential and a commercial mixed IPA. We just suggest you pick whichever one seems to have the most dollar value. In here, new construction, replacement, single family, multifamily. The most important are these bottom 2, dealer, market, and job. A dealer IPA is if you're asking for a a discount for a specific dealer. Maybe it's your top seller or something, and so you want to give them a little better discount. This would be a dealer specific IPA. Market IPA means you can sell it at these pricing to anybody that walks into your door at your discretion. You decide who you sell it to, and you don't need to tell us every time you have a new dealer that you want to use on this IPA. And then job IPAs is when it's job driven, right? Maybe you're bidding for a job and you need it to go a little bit lower than normal to quote this job or try to win a job or something like that, is what a job IPA is. And then the bottom one is there are only two types of IPAs. There is what we call a claimback IPA, which is what we're going to go over today, is getting those claimback credits back. But a claimback IPA means when supply purchased the product from Johnson Controls at their full standard price, whatever their everyday standard price was the time they bought that product. And then when you sell the product, you give us that sales data and we issue a credit based off the amount of the wood supply standard price based upon the approved price, also included margin. We will go into that here in just a little bit to talk about margin sharing. And then there is purchase upfront IPA. A purchase upfront is usually only job driven. If you're going to ship it directly to a job site, or it is specifically for a job and you're going to buy that product from Johnson Controls directly, not specifically, you can't do a purchase upfront for product that you're going to pull out of Win Supply's inventory or purchase from a Win Supply DC. The purchase up front is where Johnson Controls would give the discount on the invoice at the time it was purchased from JCI. So that one's not used quite as widely, especially for Win Supply, who has a lot of inventory, or you guys purchase from your DCs. The other big thing to point out is right here is this extended margin. This approved margin, so like this particular one is at an 8%. Now, this residential matrix is built on a sliding scale. So we build these IPAs at the lowest percentage. And then based on the sell price of the product, when the sell information is submitted to Johnson Controls, it's where it will calculate how much Win Supply actually sold the product for and adjust the credit accordingly. But if you ever want to know what kind of margin the IPA was approved for, it's going to be right here. And then it gets into the actual line items. You've got your product here, you've got your brand here, and I'm pointing out brand because if you do submit your own claimbacks in Navigator, you do have to make sure that this brand matches. I know there are some products, sometimes they can be Champion and sometimes they can be EvCon. But when you're doing an IPA claimback, it has to match whatever brand is on that line number or you will receive an error. So that's why I'm pointing out brand. And then down here in these boxes, can everybody see my screen? Let me make it a little bigger, I'm sorry.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be EvCon, it would actually be Guardian.
Okay, or possibly Guardian, correct. The important thing is it needs to match this brand. So it gives you the list priced, means this is Win Supply's master list price, by price, standard price, lots of words, sorry, standard price at the time this IPA was created. This is the standard price. If an IPA moves over a price increase, which this particular one has not, so if we were to go in today, this is still Win Supply's standard price for this product today. And this bottom approved price is how the IPA was approved. This is when you start getting into claimbacks. If this product was sold within 8%, then the claimback credit back to Win Supply would be the difference between the standard price and this approved price, is how much the credit would be. That's how much to expect. Now, as I will show an example later within the claimback system of the margin sharing, The more margin that it's sold for by Win Supply, great. More money Win Supply makes, the more we all make, right? It just means the more Win Supply sells the product for, the less the credit from Johnson Controls will be, because you've made your margin up front at the time you sold the product. Okay, so that's basically how to read an IPA. I'll stop for just a minute. Does anybody have questions on how to read an IPA specifically? Okay, then I just jump down to the bottom and I'm just gonna close out of that particular one. Okay, now I'm gonna move into actually submitting IPAs. Back to the main screen within Navigator, you'd go to Applications, Pricing, and IPA Claimbacks. I do want to mention one thing I didn't talk about earlier is if you hover over to the right of one of these, if it's a screen that you start going into all the time, if you click on this, it'll move it to your favorites and it'll be easier to get to, easier to find. You don't have to go the whole applications, pricing, and remember where it is every single time. But since this isn't my screen, I'm not going to mark that on this particular one. Okay, so I'm going to go into IPA claimbacks. Okay, so here is where I can enter a new IPA. I can search previous IPAs. I can look at the status of previous IPAs or anything. This period and year means what month and year was the product sold by Win Supply. So even though today is July 2nd, it's defaulted to the month previous because usually most customers wait until the following month to submit their claimbacks. I can tell you Win Supply Corporate, Elmira submits them around the 10th through the 15th of like July 10th through July 15th, she'll submit June sales or whatever. So even when she submits those, if you're wanting to search those here in Navigator, you'll want to make sure the month and the year that the product was actually sold by Win Supply is where you're searching. So like right now, if I just hit search for June, nothing's going to come up because those just haven't been submitted yet. But if I go back to May and hit search, here are going to be the 3 claimbacks for this customer. It tells what day it was submitted in the system. This is the status of it. Of course, all 3 of these are processed. Here's the credit amount that they received back on each one of these sequences. Here's the credit actual number that goes along with each sequence, and it is a hyperlink. So you could pull that up here to screen if you needed them. I do know there's a slight delay between when Supply Corporate gets these and attaches them to your account or anything like that. So if you feel like you're missing one, you could always print this out, send it to corporate, ask them to attach it to your account or something, or ask them why it's not attached to your account or whatever you need to do. This is the credit date. This is the main brand. You can list brand at a header level, and you have to list brand at a line level that we'll get to here in a minute. This is what was selected at header level. It really doesn't mean anything. It has to be correct at line level, not necessarily at header level. And then here's the IPA number that each one of these are associated with. I do want to point out real quick these sequence numbers. Sequence numbers just mean how many did you have for the month, right? This way, if I had an ineligible item, an ineligible line, which we'll also talk about here a little bit, if I have an ineligible line for sequence 1, this will tell you if you need to see what else was on there or what went wrong or try to fix the ineligible line, you just know what sequence number it goes to. If you needed to look it up, that's all sequence numbers are used for, is to kind of keep us all on the same page. Okay, so that's how you view them. I'm actually going to move to July. Of course, there's nothing in here right now. I'm going to step over to my PowerPoint real quick. If anybody would like any of this data, yes, Randy, you're very correct. We do not tell you what to sell it for. You can sell it for whatever you like, and it'll just be margin splitting. So even though that IPA was approved at 8%, it does not mean you can't sell it for more. If anybody would like any of this documentation, this PowerPoint or anything just for your records, even if you want Wind Supply Corporate to continue to submit your claimbacks, just let Robin or Jessica or I know, and we can get this over to you. It does step by step how to submit these claimbacks. And it gives a little bit more information, you know, what are claimback IPAs, which I kind of already went over, advantages to claimback pricing with margin sharing. And then it starts really getting into the IPA claimback process. And the main thing on this page is if you're going to submit them yourself, you can submit them through Navigator, which I'll show you. Or there's also a claimback template that you can fill out with your sales data and email it over to be-upgbilling@jci.com. That is my team that will get these processed for you. I do also want to point out if you do decide to submit these on your own, our policy does state that they need to be submitted within 30 days at the end of the month of sale. So like anything when supplies sold on an IPA claimback in the month of June, whether it was June 1st or June 30th, needs to be submitted no later than the last day of July, so July 31st. Now, this pertains to your big submissions. If we have ineligible lines that we have given back to you or Wind Supply Corporate, and you need a little bit to find those corrections and resubmit your corrections, those aren't held so much within this month after, right? If Elmira doesn't submit the claims till the 10th or the 15th, and it takes us around 7 to 10 business days to turn it around. Usually it's turned around quicker than that, but just in case something comes up. So let's say she doesn't get them submitted until the 15th of the month. Let's say we don't get them submitted back to her until the 25th of the month, 10 days later. Well, we obviously aren't going to just give you 5 or 6 days to get those corrections submitted, right? That wouldn't be fair. So corrections can go probably another 30 days beyond that, or whatever, but we definitely wouldn't want any like January submissions coming in July. That's just a little too old. We also do, I don't want to say that's a hard stop. Obviously things happen for everybody. People leave companies, things happen and somebody has to be. Okay, so sorry, my internet blinked. You guys can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So people leave companies, right? People have to leave unexpectedly or whatever. And it just takes time to get somebody retrained or something like that. Obviously, if something happens and you realize older sales have not been submitted, let's reach out, let's talk about it. Let's see where we can get to something. So IPA claimbacks, great question, Randy. IPA claimbacks can be submitted as often as you would like. I do have one or two customers that like to submit theirs every single day, just so they have more credits coming in at all times. That's a lot of work. Not on our end, but I assume, you know, every day they have to remember to submit those. I have a couple of customers that submit them every single week. They want to keep up on it weekly and run a sales report weekly to do this. Most customers wait and just file the whole month, just like Wind Supply Corporate does. That is completely up to you guys. makes no difference to us. We run our reports on our end every Monday and Thursday. And so they're caught at least twice a week. So if you submit them into Navigator or you email them over to the BE-UPG billing, if you choose to do them yourself, they'll get picked up every Monday and Thursday. So however frequently you decide to do it is absolutely fine. Okay, so then this gets into what data must you have to file a claimback. These particular items are sales data out of your system, out of Win Supply system. So the invoice date is the date when Supply sold it to their contractor or dealer, to their customer. Not, I don't need to know when you guys purchased it from JCI. So your invoice date, who you sold it to, what invoice number it was in your system to sell it to the contractor or dealer, the model number that was sold, the quantity that was sold, the extended sale price, so how much did you sell it for, and the serial number. If it's a serialized product, we do know not all of our product is serialized, so of course some lines will not have a serial number. That's fine, you just leave that column blank for that particular item. If it is a serialized item, I do need the serial number, each serial number on each individual line. So let's say you sold 5 serialized products on one invoice to one customer. I would need 5 lines because unfortunately our system just doesn't have enough characters in that field to hold all 5 serial numbers. I do have, so the claimback template, this is where the claimback template comes into play here. This is all the same data. This right here in yellow that I'm highlighting in yellow is all the data in the exact same order that is needed. The invoice date, who you sold it to, what your invoice number was, what the product is, how much you sold it for. I meant quantity, how much you sold it for, and the serial number. So if you sold 5 here, I would need a quantity of 1, how much each individual one, and then you would just have 5 lines and each line would have its own individual serial number. If it's a non-serialized product and you sold 5 on the same invoice, I can have a quantity of 5, and how much did you sell all 5 of those for total is what I would need here, and this field would just be blank, which is absolutely fine. I'm just gonna put that back for a minute. The only other 2 things that weren't touched upon in the PowerPoint that's on the template is your distributor ID number with us and the IPA number. Now, if you were submitting those into Navigator yourself, these 2, well, this one is already tied to you signing into Navigator, and you would select this when you would select the IPA number at what we call the header level, which I'll show in just a minute. We'll actually submit a test one just to show you what it is. So this is really the only sales data that you'll be copying and pasting into the actual Navigator screen if you choose to submit them yourself. Okay. And then also I do have on the PowerPoint, once it's processed by Ducted Systems, JCI, a notification of any removed or ineligible items will be sent to whoever submitted the IPA. I'm sorry, whoever submitted the claimback. So if you choose to do your own claimback, and so it shows us that you entered it, you would get the email on any removed or ineligible items. The ones that Elmira submits in a big spreadsheet to us, we combine all the ineligible items back on another spreadsheet and email it back to her. And then I do believe she splits them up and emails them individually out. Okay, and then the PowerPoint's going to go into how to submit the claimback, and I'm actually going to show you guys the Navigator. So I'm not going to do that from the PowerPoint. Okay, so from Navigator, let me stop for just a minute. See how everybody's doing. Any questions so far? Okay. In Navigator, just because we're July 2nd on the template I created this morning, I just put today as the sales. So that's what I'm going to have. When you're submitting a new claim back, you can do two things. You can select the month and year here, because like when we first came in here, June was the default because it's always a month behind. And even though I know I'm going to submit some pretending like today is the sale date, so I would technically need this to be July 2024, I can leave this where the default is, add new claim, and I can change it here in this screen to July and fill out my header information. Or if this was defaulted to June and I changed it to July and then add new claim, now it says July. Either way, doesn't matter. So this first small screen is what we call header details. This is just going to be across the top. This is where you will select the main brand. This is where I talked about earlier having a brand at header level, but then in the next screen, it's more important at the line level because some of your IPAs may be mixed. What if you have a couple of line items on that IPA at a champion level, but then you also have some guardian mixed in too, right? I would pick whichever one has the most at header level, but then on the next screen, when you add your product, it will have to be correct at line level. And I'll show you what the error looks like and how to fix it and things like that. Here you're going to enter your IPA number or your quote number. You can start typing it in. It is finicky where like you do have to select the one with 4 leading zeros for it to pull in an expiration date. If I was to just hit tab, no expiration pulls forward. And if I was to move forward, like it's going to give me an error. I can't move forward. I do actually have to select the one with the 4 leading zeros and let an expiration date come in before it will let me move forward. Reference number. Reference number is anything you might want actually printed on the credit memo. The ones that come in from Elmira, we just call it, like I'll call it July claimbacks. Just something generic for the ones that Elmira submits because it's 3,000 to 6,000 lines, right? But if you were submitting some yourself, maybe you want it to be ABC school. Maybe it's specific to a job and you want that to actually print on the credit memo. That's what reference number is for. I'm just going to call this one test though. The comment section, and the reference and the comment are not a required field whatsoever. It can be left blank. Reference field just prints on the credit memo. Comments do not. As you can see, these are some that I've used before. And these are just notes for behind the scenes. So I don't forget down the road, like I had to move a claim back because the customer used the wrong IPA. And so we had to reverse it. You don't have to, 9 times out of 10, there's nothing in comments. Your name will automatically come in based on how you're logged in. Phone number is not a required field. We don't need it. We probably won't call you. But the email, I just put test for this particular one. I would prefer if you put your email address in here if you're going to submit your own. That way we know who to email if there's any removed or ineligible lines. We want to make sure we notify the correct person to get the opportunity to correct those lines, right? There is a check mark over here to select to receive automated updates for this particular claimback. It is a very generic email. Unless you just like emails, I'd prefer you not check mark it because it honestly doesn't give you enough details. So it's just going to leave you confused. I'm so sorry. We're trying to work on that. But if there are any removed or ineligible lines, me or one of my coordinators, Christy Ware or Kel Ellis, will actually email you directly. It won't be a generic email. We will email you directly on what lines were removed and why. The email is a required field, but there's no verification if you don't want to give your email. Like, I'm just going to put test to move forward. But again, if I would prefer you put your email, so if there are problems, we know who to email. Okay, continue to the next page. Okay, this page, so the top part is the header, everything you just submitted somewhere else. And this bottom part is where we're going to start adding line items. Each sequence can only hold up to 200 lines, and that's what it says here in red. But if you have your sales data filled out, I mean, all the way up to 200 lines, you can copy up to 200 lines at once, copy and paste them all at one time. So right here in this gray box is where we're going to copy and paste all of our lines at once. And here it just gives you the same information that you need in the exact same order: invoice date, contractor, invoiced model, quantity, extended sale price, and serial number. Because we have it here on the template, I just threw a couple out here. So I'm going to copy that. Jump down here in this gray box, paste, add to claim. It's going to say this may take a moment. The more lines you have, the little bit longer it takes. This one took immediately because it was only 2 lines and it dropped down here in order. If I had all 200 lines, obviously it'd take 15 seconds more or something. You can also, like, if you just have one line and you don't have it in a spreadsheet, this option 2 right here, you could actually manually enter this data. So I'm gonna throw another one in here, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't matter. And I put the same product. And I sold one at $1,400. And then there's a serial number here. And then you can hit add line, and this one does one at a time. So now I have a line 3. But everybody likes this copy and paste. Way easier, way faster. Okay. When I was talking earlier about brand at header level and brand at line level, let's pretend like this particular item here is actually Guardian. And then I'm going to hit refresh. So this red triangle is what you would get if your brand doesn't match. Well, 2 things. The red triangle can be one of 2 things. It means either 1, your brand is off, is incorrect at that line level, or 2, this product is not on this IPA listed, and you'd be able to go look that up. So that's what the error would look like. Of course, we know this one is champion. I'm going to change it to champion and refresh. And it takes away the error. Okay, so I see Greg asked, any way to speed the entry part up? Takes me about 2 minutes each entry and times out multiple times. Question, Greg, are you talking IPA claimback, or are you talking actually submitting an IPA? Submitting an IPA. Okay, yes. Quote management and quote status, when you're also modifying an IPA, it does time out. The claimback screen should not, unless your internet completely goes down. But submitting IPAs, yes, it is a hassle. I'm sorry, it does happen. I do highly recommend anybody that is having that problem to please reach out to your residential pricing analyst or your commercial pricing analyst, and they should have tips and tricks to show you the fastest way to speed up actually submitting an IPA, how to get it to not time out, how to get it to try not to take so long. I can also tell you that we have submitted a ticket to IT to ask for upgrades on IPA submission, to where one day in our perfect world, you would be able to have the same kind of data in a spreadsheet when you're submitting an IPA, like what product, what are you wanting the requested buy price to be, or the discount, or the multiplier to be? And you would be able to copy and paste that into the IPA submission moment, and it would go much faster. You'd be able to submit multiple lines. We don't know what that quantity is going to be capped at yet until we hear back from them on that IT ticket. But we do have that in the works. I'm just not sure how long it'll take to change that coding in the background. So I do apologize for that. But I do understand the frustration. Please reach out to your analyst, your pricing analyst. They should have tips and tricks to help you greatly get over some of those hurdles. Okay, back to IPA submission. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next page. Oh, I do want to point out something else. I do have the export. You do have the export here button. If you have a whole bunch of lines, you want to export this out, something's wrong, you want to save a copy. I don't know anything like that. It'll export these lines out into an Excel spreadsheet for you if you wanted to keep it. We also do have the ability, like, let me move this one back to error. Like, if this first line item was truly an error because this product is not on this IPA and you didn't realize it until afterwards, maybe you picked it up and it was supposed to belong to another IPA. You do have the ability over here to check mark any lines that you want to remove and hit remove selected items. If all the lines were in error or you accidentally grabbed the wrong batch from your Excel or something, this right here will highlight all of these and you can hit remove selected lines. I think it asks if you're sure and you hit OK and it'll remove all these lines and you can kind of start fresh. So I wanted to point those out also. Okay, let me move back to fresh. Okay, and I'm going to continue to the second page. The second page is the screen that actually gives you at each individual line number what the credit amount would be for each individual line. Here is the total credit memo amount if you were to submit this like this. But I want to point out some things. So here's where we're going to talk about margin sharing. This is the number one reason why Wind Supply locations get that deduction back from Wind Supply Corporate after submitting IPAs. Because these residential matrix or most IPAs can all basically be sold on a sliding margin percent, but the higher you go over the approved margin, the less credit you're going to get back from Johnson Controls because you made that margin at the time you sold it to your contractor dealer, which is great, right? We all want more margin. But here's where margin sharing comes into place. So these three items, all on the same IPA, they're all the same product, they're all sold at a quantity of 1. But if you notice, I put in 3 different sell amounts. So this is where Wind Supply would tell us how much they sold it for. Because this is all the same product, all on the same IPA, this quote status probably timed out on me. I'm going to go look for this product on this IPA. So here's the product, right? So when it's sold without margin sharing, your credit would be this standard amount minus this, the approved amount, $225.87. If this product is sold at 8%, because that was the bottom approved margin at the top of the screen. This is what the credit amount would be. And most of the time when these are put into Wind Supply system, this is what your system tells you, excuse me, is going to be your credit every time. And so that's where your credit amounts come from. But then when the sales data is actually supplied to us, None of these credit amounts are for that 225.87. And the reason being is because of the amount that it was sold for. Again, it's great that you were able to sell it for more margin. You've made more margin, but it deducts from the amount of credit Johnson Controls is going to issue to you. So that's why these have different credit amounts. Because everything over that 8% margin, Johnson Controls and Wind Supply is now sharing. So here's where it's showing on this particular item. If it was sold for $1,000, $1,024, excuse me, the actual margin at the time when Supply sold this was $346. Well, the amount of margin that we're sharing after the 8%, because Wind Supply gets that 8% all by themselves. But beyond that 8% is $264 that now half of that extra margin of the $264, half of that is Wind Supply and half of that is Johnson Controls, because we are margin sharing beyond that 8%. So if we were to take this max dollar amount of 225.87 minus half of 264, and I'm just going to round numbers 132.20 off the top of my head. So, I mean, I'm off 2 pennies because I just rounded, but this is where that credit amount is coming from. So it's taking that max credit that Wind Supply could have got from Johnson Controls and deducting our half of the shared margin, making the credit to Wind Supply 93.67. Most people, are like, well, we're getting less margin from Johnson Controls then, so we're making less money. Like, this is a bad deal. But you got to remember, you've already made your margin up front when you sold it to your dealer or contractor. You've got that money in hand, right? So you still made good on this. I'm going to open this up for questions in just a minute. I do want to point out, so this bottom one that's in yellow, if you were to submit this on your own, this particular one, because I shot it up at 1,400. Nobody, I don't see where anybody sold this for $1,400. I just threw in a high dollar amount just to prove a point. When it turns yellow like this, what it's saying is Wind Supply sold this product at $1,400 at such a high margin percentage that you guys have made $722 in margin. After the initial 8% margin, we should be sharing $610. Well, that max credit amount was $225. So minus half of 610, it actually on paper looks like Wind Supply owes Johnson Controls almost $80. Now, that's not true, because if we actually took that $80, you would be buying that product for more than the standard price. So obviously that's not true, but this basically tells us that on this particular one, because the margin, so much margin, extra margin was made by Wind Supply at the time they sold the product, JCI is just not going to also issue a credit. And we cannot move forward. You wouldn't be able to, and neither can we on, like, I can't on my side if I tried to submit this claim. I would get an error and I wouldn't be able to move forward, because this has to be removed. This line has to be removed because it's taking $80 away from these other two lines that Wind Supply deserves a credit on, right? And so these yellow lines, you can't move forward. It's what we call, when I talk about ineligible items here in a minute, it is what we call neg credit due, meaning negative credit due, meaning on paper, it looks like Wind Supply owes Johnson Controls money. We don't do that. We're not invoicing you for that. We're not taking it away from the other lines. And so we would check mark this product, remove selected lines. It says, are you sure? And so that credit, the whole credit moved from $188 to $267 because we didn't want that to negatively affect the other two lines. Okay, I'm gonna stop right here. Are there any questions for margin sharing? Because this is usually the part where things fall apart. Okay, I will go ahead and move forward. I am getting close. I know we only have 5 minutes left, but I do want to point out real quick too, Robin will share my information. If at the time anybody has big deductions, even through Wind Supply Corporate, even if you're not submitting them and you don't understand why we're not equaling out to the same amount, please reach out to me and we will dive into specific examples and talk through this so you guys understand this. Okay, and then from here you would submit claim. It comes to us and you're done with your stuff until you hear back from us if any of these items were removed. The other thing that I wanted to go over really quickly are just our most common ineligible items. Yes, Lori, yes, Florida has an Excel sheet with pricing where you put in what you want your sell price to be, what you're going to sell it, and it calculates out the claim back expected. Yes, those come from your pricing analyst. So if anybody wants that, needs that, it is a major help. You should be able to get that from your residential pricing analyst. Okay, so just really quickly, so I don't tie you up for too much longer, these are the most common. If we email you back or we email Elmira back, this is what it looks like. Actually, that's a lie. I forgot. There is this, it's called sequence, and it's going to look like this. This is where I said when we submit lines back to you and eligible lines, this tells you that it went with sequence 1 for July. If you needed to look back through Navigator and see what other lines were on there. So this tells you which sequence it was denied from. There would be something in every single one of these if it made it into Navigator. So here's our most common reasons things get denied or ineligible. Missing serial number. Obviously, if it's a serialized product and we didn't get a serial number, it's ineligible. Missing all serial numbers means it's a serialized product, but there's more than a quantity of one. So 1, we need the serial numbers, but 2, we need that split out. Each serial number needs to be on its own line. Otherwise, our system cannot hold that many digits. Invalid serial number just means the serial number given is not valid on our side. Maybe a digit is wrong, maybe a digit is missing, something like that. Serial number doesn't match product means that the serial number given doesn't match the product that was given to us. We don't know which one's correct. It was something transposed in the product, was something transposed in the serial number. We don't know, so therefore it's denied, it's removed, it's marked ineligible. IPA expired just means the sell date is beyond the IPA's expiration date. And so it can't be used as a claimback unless you resubmit it and ask your pricing analyst to extend that IPA. Discounted means that the serial number that was given was purchased at a discount up front at the time it was purchased from Johnson Controls, so it can't also receive a claimback credit. So it can't have double dipped discounts, credits. Product not on IPA just means that the product listed, it doesn't match the IPA. It's not listed on the IPA that was given. So maybe it's on another IPA, maybe you thought it was on the IPA, and maybe you want to modify the IPA and resubmit it with this product on it to your pricing analyst, and then we can process it for a claim back after that, but not at the time it's not on there. Neg credit due is the one I just talked about with margin sharing. It means negative credit due. It means it was sold for a higher margin than approved on the IPA, which is great. just Wind Supply's already made their margin up front. So JCI doesn't owe Wind Supply a credit for those particular lines. Purchase up front IPA just means the IPA listed is marked as a purchase up front. So Wind Supply should have got the discount at the time they purchased it from Johnson Controls, and it can't be used for a claimback credit. Claimback credit. And then the last one that you might see are two lines that'll always be together. And one line's going to say okay, and one line's going to say duplicate. What this means is this line that says okay, like this particular one, I moved this top line back to June. So it looks like this product, and again, we're assuming these two serial numbers, they would have to match. The serial number was sold in June, and a claimback credit was already given, so that line was okay. But now in July, that same serial number was submitted again. Because claimback credit was already given in June, Johnson Controls can't also give another claimback credit on that same serial number the very next month. Now, one thing we haven't talked about very quickly is returns. You are not required to give returns to us, but just know that if this product was sold, the serial number was sold in June, and then that customer brought that back, maybe they picked up the wrong unit, nothing's wrong with it, it goes back into Wind Supply's inventory because nothing's wrong with it, and so therefore it was resold in July to that same dealer, a different dealer, I don't care. But if the return was never submitted to us for us to take back that original credit, we can't give a second credit. So it'll always say okay and duplicate. We always provide which line credit was already given to, and then the one that's actually being denied as a duplicate because the serial numbers match. Those are the most common ineligible removed lines. Most of those can be fixed and resubmitted to us for claimback credit afterwards. Okay, I know that was a lot. Any questions at the moment? Okay, so if no questions at the moment, anytime you do, please reach out and we can go over actual data at any given time. Okay, Robin, I think that's my claimback spiel.
Okay, that was excellent. That was excellent. I'm going to open it up just for questions. I know we're over the hour, but if anybody has any questions, please, this is the time. Feel free to unmute yourself, put something in the chat.
I guess everybody's good. Oh.
Oh,
Yes, Greg.
yes, Greg. Well, you guys know where to find us. If you have questions later, or if you get into a situation where you need access or something doesn't look right, of course, please reach out. Anything else, Chandra?
I I don't have anything else that I can think of. I think I tried to put it
Okay.
all out there.
Okay. Well, everybody, we appreciate your time. Have a happy and safe holiday. Thank you so much to Chandra for this awesome presentation. This was such good information. We will let you go and we'll see you next time. Thank you.